Alright guys, let me just get started by saying that this gun is absolutely nasty. In fact, I don't think there's a single gun in my vault that is more deadly than this. Today, we're going to be talking about the Wizened Rebuke fusion rifle. Now, some of you may recall that a while back we had a bit of a fusion rifle meta. A few of you probably have some form of PTSD that shows itself whenever you see the word air until. Thankfully, Bungie back in March decided to nerf fusion rifles. This included a blanket nerf to range and the effect of optics on range, as well as a lowering of the damage fall-off floor from 75% to 50%, which means that at super long ranges, each bolt can drop down to half the damage that it would normally do. In addition, the perk backup plan was nerfed. It used to do what Plan C did in Destiny 1 by significantly lowering the charge rate of the gun while maintaining full damage when you fire right after drawing. Bungie tweaked it so that it essentially converts your fusion to the rapid-fire sub-archetype. In other words, your charge time is still decreased, but so is your damage. All this means that backup plan is no longer a top-tier perk that you want on your fusion rifle. Now, it might seem like fusion rifles are down for the count, but I'm here to tell you that Wizened Rebuke is still a top-tier competitive option, despite the fact that fusion rifle usage has dropped off significantly since its place in the meta back in early 2020. Now here's my Wizened Rebuke roll. It has the red dot microsight, which is really the best sight you can get on this rifle, and it also has under pressure for that big boost in stability and accuracy, as well as rangefinder. I also have a handling masterwork, which isn't bad, but a ranger stability masterwork is always preferred. Now I always like to have a 6-round magazine so that under pressure procs for the first 3 shots rather than just the first 2. I accomplish this in 2 ways depending on what playstyle I'll be using. If I know that I'm going to need a more aerial form of play, I'll slap on an Icarus mod and use the enhanced battery perk in the second column. This is especially useful against things like mountaintop, which are most potent against enemies on the ground or near walls. Otherwise, I'll just swap out Enhanced Battery for Projection Fuse for that extra range in conjunction with a backup mag mod. This is great for countering hyper-aggressive play since you can just sit back and one-shot enemies from long distances. Now, fusion rifles are really only worth using if they can significantly outrange the top-tier shotguns, which at the moment is Felwinter's Lie, and it has an effective range of about 8 meters according to the Crucible scientist Fallout Plays. I'll link his video in the description. In my testing, depending on the perks you have, Wizened Rebuke should have an effective range of about 19 to 23.5 meters. Now I say effective because fusion rifles are naturally inconsistent due to their random bolt spread. I define effective as about 75% consistency, though this percentage is purely an approximation by my best guesses. Getting a statistically relevant result would take tens to hundreds of tests, which I don't quite have the time to conduct. Now, that bottom effective range of 19 meters is obviously enough to combat your typical aggressive shotgunner. But of course, more range is always best. I don't want to bore you with the many detailed tests that I conducted, but I'll summarize the findings for you with the help of a chart on screen. Also, quick shout out to Floating Trout 6 for letting me shoot at him for about a half hour while testing these. Now obviously range perks like Projection Fuse increase the effective range, and in addition, under pressure also bumps it up by about 2.5 meters. One of the more interesting results I found was that the enhanced scatter projectile targeting mods will increase the effective range by about 1 meter. These mods are currently available on the seasonal artifact, so I'd recommend picking them up if you haven't already. So this brings us to the question, what is the god roll that you should be shooting for on this weapon? Well, first of all, I would recommend that you aim at getting the red dot microsight in addition to either Projection Fuse for increased range or liquid coils for an extra 1 damage per bolt. This allows you to 4-bolt Guardians at 8 resilience or less instead of only Guardians at 6 resilience or less. Enhanced Battery is also a solid perk because it will grant you 1 extra under pressure round, assuming you have under pressure on your fusion. In the third perk column, under pressure and firmly planted are both solid options, but I personally prefer under pressure because you don't need to stay on the ground in order for it to proc. In the fourth column, there are a number of good options. I first recommend Rangefinder, but if you can't get that, Tap the Trigger and High Impact Reserves are both good options. High Impact Reserves is especially nice because it has great synergy with Under Pressure, as both of them activate under the exact same conditions. Like I mentioned earlier, Wizened Rebuke is an absolutely excellent weapon. I personally think it has some of the best potential at beating out other top-tier special weapons like Fellwinter's Lie, Revoker, and Beloved. This is for a few reasons. Now, assuming you get a solid set of accuracy perks, this weapon has a fairly low skill floor. Not quite as low as shotguns, but your typical gamer should be able to pick this up and find at least some success with it. It also has excellent playmaking potential. I've been playing with this gun for a while, and I can typically land at least one triple kill or quad kill in every match I play in the controlled game mode. In addition, fusion rifles are not necessarily the most common weapons in the Crucible at the moment, and as a result, few people know how to play against them effectively, especially if you're competent at charging your weapon before an opponent is within view, also known as pre-charging. The best counters to fusions are either long-range weapons like snipers or super short-range weapons like shotguns and sidearms. However, I believe that fusions have an edge on all of these for the typical player. Snipers have a relatively high skill floor, and you can often avoid being sniped with just a bit of map knowledge. Shotguns and sidearms both require you to close the gap on an opponent super quickly or use cover extremely well. This is possible on some of your closer range maps, but on the majority of maps, it's quite difficult to do this effectively against a fusion rifle user. As far as weapon pairings go, you're going to want something that covers the ranges that the Wizened Rebuke does not. Generally, I recommend pairing a pulse rifle with this gun. Recently, I've had a great deal of success with the Outbreak Perfected, a 450 round per minute pulse rifle which is very easy to land 3 burst kills with due to its unusually high stability. Now, unfortunately, the Wizened Rebuke is about to be sunset at the end of this season, so you will need to find a replacement fusion rifle if you intend to use one inside of Trials. It is best that you find a high impact frame fusion rifle for the sake of 4 bolting enemies. However, some of these fusions aren't capable of rolling with important perks like Under Pressure, and some of them are difficult to farm for. I've recently been experimenting with my Season of Arrivals version of the Precision Frame Fusion Rifle, the main ingredient. Mine has both Under Pressure and Rangefinder, plus it also has a Range Masterwork. I tested the range of this weapon, and it tends to fall between 19 and 20.5 meters, depending on your perks. At its max range, it's only 3 meters short of achieving Wizened Rebuke range, which is a somewhat significant drop, but the gun is still quite usable. I would also recommend fusion rifles such as Exile's Curse, Elatha FR4, and Hollow Words, all of which will not be immediately sunset this coming season. Well, my friends, thank you so much for coming and watching. I hope you too find yourself lucky enough to land a solid fusion rifle to add a bit of variety to your Crucible matches. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like and hit that subscribe button to support the channel. It does take a fair amount of work to create exhaustive breakdowns like this one, so I always appreciate positive feedback. Stay safe, Guardians, and I hope to see you in the Crucible.